Welcome, wrestling fans and retro gamers. Today we're going to take a dive into the square circle of nostalgia to rank the legendary Nintendo 64 wrestling games. From body slams to suplexes, we got it all covered. So grab your controller and let's get ready to rumble. Coming in at number 10 is ECW Hardcore Revolution. Released in 2000, this game was developed by Acclaim Studios and published by Acclaim Entertainment. Compared to all the other games that's on this list, ECW Hardcore Revolution didn't stand out to me. It reminds me of WWF Attitude. As far as the graphics and control style, it's harder to actually do moves in game because the controllers are more Mortal Kombat type of style. But the roster is stacked. They have matches like barbed wire matches, tag team matches, and creator wrestler modes. Coming in at number 9, we have WCW Backstage Assault. Released in 2000, this game was developed by Kodak Interactive and published by Electronic Arts. WCW Backstage Assault takes place in the backstage area. It means that traditional wrestling game features like tag teams and other group-based matches are entirely absent. Though it is an admirable attempt to do something a bit different to usual wrestling games, it strays so far from the ring that WCW Backstage Assault ends up being far from a crowd pleaser. Coming in at number 8, WCW Mayhem. Released in 1999, this game was developed by Kodak Interactive and published by Electronic Arts. The controls are similar to WWF Attitude, and the roster of wrestlers was excellent, with numerous of stables and factions very well represented across the 50 playable wrestlers available in the game. One impressive feature was a pay-per-view mode, which allowed players to enter a code and unlock real pay-per-view match cards. Codes would be shown on the WCW Nitro show a week before a pay-per-view aired, allowing players to recreate real-life events pretty much as they happen. Coming in at number 7, WWF Warzone. Released in 1998, this game was developed by Kodak Interactive and published by Electronic Arts. A large variety of match types is what made WWF Warzone an impressive early entry for Nintendo's N64 console. Coming in at number 6, WWF Attitude. Released in 1999, this game was developed by Acclaim Studios and published by Acclaim Entertainment. Acclaim was a big deal in the 90s, releasing some absolute huge titles on the 16-bit and 32-bit console of the era. Create a stable mode and pay-per-view mode were both new additions and were both excellent. The pay-per-view mode allowed players to build their own wrestling event, which included matches, the event name, and even customizing the arena itself right down to the color of the lights and the ring ropes. Coming in at number 5, WCW Vs NWO World Tour. This game was released in 1997 and was developed by AKI and published by THQ. This is the second best-selling wrestling game for the N64 overall. An N64 exclusive, WCW vs NWO World Tour also introduced developers AKI's excellent grappling system, which became the foundation which publisher THQ based their wrestling games on for many years. Being the first N64 WCW game, it's definitely lacking in a few areas. There's no creative wrestler mode, no story mode, and even lacking of ring entrances, all three of which will soon be staples to the genre featured in every wrestling game. However, along with the fantastic gameplay, which means WCW vs NWO World Tour has it where it counts, which is why it sits proudly in the middle of our best N64 wrestling games on this list. Coming in at number 4, WCW NWO Revenge. Released in 1998, this game was developed by Asmik Ace Entertainment and AKI and published by THQ. Just to prove my repeated point about how huge wrestling was back in the late 90s, WCW NWO Revenge ended up being the highest selling third-party game on the N64 with 1.8 million copies sold. It featured the same grappling system seen in the previous title, also developed by AKI and published by THQ, which was easy to learn and incredibly satisfying in gameplay terms. It also featured a championship mode and a ranking system for players to compete amongst each other to gain high scores. Coming in at number 3, WWF Wrestlemania 2000. Released in 1999, this game was developed by AKI and published by THQ, with THQ picking up the WWF license and WCW moving to EA. It was pretty much a given that the grapple-based wrestling system found in the AKI developed WCW titles would now form the basis of the WWF games. There was a roster of 50 WWF wrestlers to choose from, an extensive creator wrestler mode, along with a massive amount of customization options for existing wrestlers gave WrestleMania 2000 a lot of depth and appeal. Interestingly, many of the options included in creator wrestler mode could allow players to create wrestlers who were at the time signed to WCW, thus creating the possibility of an unofficial crossover. It also featured modes like Road to WrestleMania and King of the Ring. Coming in at number 2, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, released in 2000, developed by AKI Corporation and published by Asmik Ace Entertainment. The game was released only in Japan in 2000 and is the sequel to Virtual Pro Wrestling 64 in 1997. Interestingly, it features numerous moves that are banned in US wrestling for being too dangerous, as well as an expanded creator wrestler mode with impressively detailed mask editing options. And finally, number 1, WWF No Mercy, released in 2000 and would be the last release by AKI and THQ. It was the final wrestling game from AKI and THQ on the N64, yet another that was exclusive to the console too, and represented the pinnacle of the excellent grappling system which developers have successfully implemented in every game since WCW Vs NWO World Tour. It featured modes like Championship Mode, a story mode with branching paths depending on the outcome of the matches, ladder matches, backstage areas, and a extensive Create a Wrestler mode, and a roster of 60 wrestlers. WWF No Mercy had it all and then some. Thanks for joining me on this trip down memory lane. Do you agree with my rankings? Let me know in the comments below which N64 wrestling game is your all-time favorite. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more retro gaming.